Hello, my name is Pastor Eric Shafer. I am the senior pastor here at Mount Olive Lutheran Church in Santa Monica, California. And this is Hope Matters, a program of Mount Olive Church where we talk to interesting people from around the USA and even around the world about the theme of hope, because we believe that hope matters. Our guest today is my friend, Pastor Janet Bregar, PhD, who is a true bivocational pastor. Pastor Janet is the pastor of Village Lutheran Church in Brentwood and also a professor at Cal State Fullerton. Welcome, Janet. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Tell us a little bit about your work at the university.
Well, I'm in the religious studies department, and I this semester have 130 students of all walks of life, a lot of dreamers, a lot of people from around the globe, and they are interested in studying religion. So full class load this semester. We're virtual the whole year, actually, from COVID. So that's been a struggle for students. But, you know, they're doing well and they're hanging in there.
Wow. So how many different classes for those 135?
So 3 with about 50 in each one.
Wow. And you said partly because of online, they can be anywhere.
Right. Anywhere. Yeah. People were in Japan, Saudi Arabia. A lot of people couldn't get back for the fall semester, so they are participating online. And I especially feel bad for the freshmen, those of you out there that are freshmen who their whole first year is virtual from their parents' house, not what they were hoping they would be.
Or what their parents were hoping they would be.
Yeah.
Huge challenges today for these families who've come home and where their parents and the kids would probably rather not be in the same house.
Yeah. I had one time where a mom was delivering lunch during the class.
And speaking of that, you're a mom and a grandmom too, right?
Yes. I have 2 biological children, 2 stepchildren, and 3 grandchildren.
Wonderful. So, do I remember that the grandchildren are in St. Louis?
They are in St. Louis, yes.
And and you're here, so then you can't get. It's not so easy to get there right now.
I drove. I did take a trek.
All right.
COVID style.
And you've been pastor at Village Church for a while.
For 25 years, yes. About 24 this year, actually. Yeah.
You've served all of your ministry, though, in Southern California, right?
Well, no, I did my interim in San Francisco, and yes, and then I worked for the prior denomination of we're in the Lutheran Church in the ELCA in New York, and I've lived different places doing different ministries. So, but I moved here about the same time. So for the last few years, I've been doing that.
I didn't know that you worked for the LCA in New York at the church.
Yes, in New York City. It was actually on the farm crisis during the 70s, if you remember that. So I can really sympathize with a lot of things that the rural areas are going through right now, because it's a tough time.
Well, we're going to talk about hope today. And before we started recording, you and I were listing, a half dozen reasons that it's easy not to be very hopeful today. Politics, COVID, racial injustice, climate change, economics, we could go on. So where do you find hope today, Janet?
Well, honestly, I am a female pastor. So I have to say that my entire life has been hope. It's been a step towards hope. So I was Roman Catholic in my earlier part of my life, and it was around Vatican II, and it was women were going to be pastors in just a few years, 10 years. So as you can tell, that didn't happen. And just so many instances that I've had to take steps out for, I think, actually everything I've done. So my entire life has been understanding what hope means and acting in hope. Just basics, food on the table, jobs, getting a PhD, everything has been an uphill battle, as they say. An uphill trek, maybe that's a better word, an uphill trek. Battle sometimes, but always a trek.
So you've been ordained around 30 years?
I have, yes.
Me a few more than that, as you know. So, When you were ordained, there weren't as many female pastors in the ELCA.
No, in fact, what would happen is, they would put you, it was just so unusual in the LCA and the ELCA rather, you have to get hired really essentially. So you're not, somebody doesn't give you a job. So in the Methodists, they would appoint women, but in the Lutherans, you had to get sort of hired. And it was really, really tough. So we used to go around to you'd have to get interviewed by a church. And so we used to take turns just going for interviews, even though we knew we wouldn't get them. So they would be used to having a woman pastor, even as a candidate, just visually to see the pastor. And then essentially it was still hard to get churches. So they would put you in as an interim and then people would go, oh, it's not so bad. And then that was kind of your way in to be a pastor. Or you came with your spouse, which I didn't have right at that moment. So
And this is the 50th year of
yeah, 50th year, right.
in the Lutheran Church. And now in our seminaries, they are at least half women candidates. And for our viewers, even though the ELCA has declined in membership across the country, there's a shortage of pastors, and therefore, if we didn't have women pastors, we'd be in much worse shape, just on basic numbers.
Yeah.
We need more pastors, male and female, in this church right now. I know. Talking to the bishop, they have this meeting once a year where they ask for candidates, and they never get as many as they'd like to have. And then places in the middle of the country, like Missouri, go have a lot of calls that never get filled these days.
Yeah, it's really tough. It's tough. And it's a hard job. You have to have a lot of skills to be a pastor, I have to say.
Balancing a lot of balls, as you and I both got to continue to do. So that's for sure. Janet, we're nearing the election. This interview will appear after the election. What do you make about politics these days? It's bitter, it's divisive. I could see young people saying, "Why do I want anything to do with that?"
Well, here's where my professor hat is put on. So I teach the history of world religions, that's my specialty, and the history of Christianity. So when you think back about the Reformation, about the early church, where, if the bishop disagreed with another bishop, they would, go after them with knives, and a lot of the church councils, some of those big decisions that we consider moments of faith were done, by which person had better weapons. The Reformation especially was extremely bloody. So for me, I see that we have made tremendous progress. It is divisive now, it's polarizing, but if you go back into history and you even think about Henry VIII, who made everybody swear to him, and then he kind of slaughtered the village. So I think one of the reasons I'm a Lutheran is because at the Reformation, Martin Luther was a dialogue person. And I think that over time, dialogue has replaced, bloodiness. And so even though we watched the debates and, they're fairly tame compared to other prior moments in history. So if you want to talk about hope, that's what gives me hope. Here we are in a very contentious election with people that have very definite views. And even though, it's discouraging in some ways, they're standing at a podium and they're discussing and they're fighting out their concepts, and people are going and voting. And you think about the Magna Carta, and you think about all of our history behind us as human beings, and women are voting. Minorities are no longer 3/5 of a person. When you think about the big picture, wow, it's a moment of hope. I hope my person wins. I'll make it more hopeful, but we're going to work it through, and we're going to work it through.
That's really good. I don't know if you know, my dad was a history professor.
No, I didn't know that.
My brother's a political scientist, but even in the church, think of the things that divided the church 100 years ago.
Right.
Yes, Protestantism has declined in the U.S., and you and I talk about this a lot, and
We do.
we can have a whole other discussion on that. But
Let's have one on that one because it's really important.
look at historic. I mean, some of the stories you hear of early church meetings. They actually give you hope for today because we are beyond. I mean, we had a governor in Pennsylvania 150 years ago or less who was, elected on the anti-Mason party. I mean, we had.
Yeah.
We had the Ku Klux Klan walking down the streets of Allentown, Pennsylvania, where I grew up 50 years ago, and we had the Bund before the World War II. Things have, when you look at the historic stuff, it's not as full of foment as it seems, isn't it? Comparatively.
No, but I think that's really important, right? Even mental health people say that if you want to, keep yourself from getting depressed or unhappy or hopeless, you have to sort of look back and say, what was worse and what could be better. And I really, look at women had to lay themselves down in England and got run over. So the suffragettes. So no, we are at a point where it's tough. It's really tough. With the consciousness of the United States is changing. And, the vileness that is in the civil dialogue, no, we can't tolerate it. But when we look at the big picture, I see immense change happening. And, the thing is, we want it to happen all at once, right? You can move it this far each time, push, push, push. And, you get your 15 minutes and you have to do your part. Like, for example, women, right? It's not like the same issue anymore. As you say, half are women. So you just keep pushing and you keep taking your step forward. And I think, so while I get discouraged right now because it is bleak in some ways, in the bigger picture, I just virtually, of course, to the G20 Interfaith Forum, which was in Saudi Arabia. And everyone from across the globe was talking about COVID, talking about not quite democracy, but talking about human rights. And here I am on a global forum from Saudi Arabia talking about human rights and talking about how as a globe we can combat COVID. And that is a first. A virtual group, global, in Saudi Arabia, interfaith. So, wow.
Yeah, I mean, a few years ago, the Mormons gave me an award for interfaith work. I mean, that would not have happened even
Exactly.
10 years ago. That wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
I mean, and as you know, the Mormons are working with us in the Santa Monica Area Interfaith Council. That wouldn't have happened even 5 years ago. I mean, it's just incredible.
Right.
It changed in just that one piece. And of course, I shouldn't say Mormon, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Yeah.
We need to call them what they want to be called, and they'd rather not be called Mormon, but their Bible is the Mormon, is the Book of Mormon, but not their faith. But anyway, those changes, and you and I are both positive persons. That doesn't mean we're naive, but yeah, I see that glass as half full. I try. I think it'd be harder if we were African American people to see it as half full right now. I mean, I think that would be tougher. We do have that.
Absolutely. Or my DACA students, how much do you have to move the goalpost forward is tough, and it's harder for some people, and we can't say it's the same for everybody, but we have to lift each other up. And I feel like that is also a new normal for us, that the Black Lives Matter movement, we're all lifting each other up. And yes, we're not in the same, I was just listening to this person who said we're not in the same boat. Some people are driving in super yachts, some people have drowned, and some people are hanging on just a basic, one of those refugee boats. And that is the truth. Are you on the refugee boat? Are you on the super yacht? Not the same for everybody. But, you and I work every day, as I'm sure many of your listeners do, to make the world better and to move that thing forward.
Yeah, and helping your students and younger people see that we are making progress. And it's difficult for white people to be saying that to black people, I know, and we have to be careful, but there is progress, but it's slow. It's too slow, sure, but you know, compared to 50 years ago, yeah, I mean, and so I too have hope, even in the midst of all the strangeness going on, and you know, you can't. I don't know how I could get up in the morning if I didn't.
No, that's just it. That is it, right? If you can, some days I just say I'm staying in bed. I'm not getting out of bed. It's just too much. But then I'm like, well, you have to get out of bed. When I was a single parent for a while after I got divorced, and it was really tough. I was actually in seminary then, and I would be, going to bed at like after I got the kids to bed, then I would get up and study, and then I would go back and sleep, and I'd be like, I cannot get through this day, but I have to. My sort of goal was put my feet on the floor, just to take a step. And I feel like, as you're saying it, we're not all in the same place, and so some of us, it's harder to get out of bed and make that step on the floor. But without it, you can't live. You can't have your life.
Right. I think that's actually a pretty good place to end our brief interview today. Where we hope is necessary to get on with our lives, and or else to either get up in the morning and move on, and for all of us. So thank you, Janet, for being with us. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
I guess this is Hope Matters, a program of Mount Olive Lutheran Church here in Santa Monica, California. We talk to interesting people about the theme of hope because we believe that hope matters, and we believe we have a God of hope. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.